No matter where we are, there's always an opportunity to improve a little bit, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's never completely easy.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Casazza, the author of Training with the SEAL. I say author now because I have some chapters up on Substack that I am releasing, so go and check them out. Today's guest is no stranger to the show. He's a father, a husband, a man who embodies resilience inside and outside the arena. He's definitely a fan favorite of mine, okay? He is a resilience instructor. He teaches others that mental toughness isn't fixed. It's a skill that can be trained. On the mat, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, and in the gym, a functional fitness coach. In his career, an audiologist in the military, helping others hear life more clearly, a leader in mindset, discipline, and resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, fan favorite, Kyle Shepard. Kyle, thank you so much for coming back on.
Appreciate you, Gina. Thank you for having me back.
Okay, I have to, now we're like friends, and different ball game having you on the show now as a friend, right? Versus someone I didn't know. And it's funny though, because you texted me and you were like, doing a 6-minute wall sit and then I'll come and join, I'll come on, right? And then I mentioned it before and you were like, you got to get it in when you can. And that is a very powerful line that had someone else on the show, former a Navy SEAL on the show. And he mentioned too, like, he was like, stop making excuses. Like if you're at the airport, just do some push-ups or wherever you are, like get to do whatever you can, whenever you can. Can you talk about that mindset and how we can just get it in when we can and what to do when we have that time? Like you are a professional in terms of you're a fitness coach, like for someone that's just wanting to get into it, and I'm like, oh, I have 5 minutes before my next podcast guest. Like, how do you choose what to do and what will benefit you?
Obviously, I love fitness. I love fitness for a variety of reasons. I think it's arguably the best vehicle for resilience training. You can train your mind, of course. You can train yourself socially in a variety of domains. You can train yourself spiritually. There's always skills that you can develop through training to cause stress, see how you respond, maybe have some prepared strategies, and then continue to work on it. Continue to come back and try to push the envelope and get a little better each time. But with fitness, you're going to challenge yourself physically, of course. That's physical fitness. But when you're pushing yourself in a certain way, you're going to challenge yourself mentally. You can do it with others if you are introverted and challenge yourself socially, or if you're really extroverted, do it in solitude, do it alone, do it when no one knows about it. And then, of course, if you go hard enough, you're going to challenge your soul and spiritually. I love when I have the days that I can plan an hour and a half of the gym, and when I have all the time in the world, which it doesn't seem to be too often these days.
Yeah, you have 4 kids, and a brand new one. It was like, so, yeah. And I think that's kind of important. And I say that only because, again, with the excuses, we don't want to make well, I have this and I have that,
Right. And fitness is a priority of mine, but I have many priorities in my life that come before my own self-care even. I try to fit that in when I can, but my family is going to come first. The mission, the military will come first. When I have job demands that require me to be in the office longer than I expected, and then I come home and have kids' activities or my own coaching, the time windows for opportunistic ways to train can shrink in a hurry, and days change every day. So yeah, today is one of those days. My son came in with me to work because I was taking him to his gymnastics lesson at 11:30, and then I had a call, and then we got the kids down for a nap, and I was talking to you at 2. So I texted you knowing you would enjoy that text because I had about 10 minutes. The reason I chose a wall sit is because I actually dislocated my rib 2 weeks ago. I've been recovering from that, but finding ways to work around that as the rib gets stronger again. I'm feeling much better, but I can train my legs when my upper body is a little compromised. And then, of course, what are your goals? If you're trying to increase a certain capability, a certain adaptation, whether it's speed, power, strength, endurance, then you're going to frame your goals according to what that adaptation you're seeking is. We talked about this the first time we chatted, isometric holds, because you can know the time you're going for and you can plan that snack, if you will. I had a great conversation recently with Kyle Shepard on Substack. He's a fitness coach, strength coach in particular, but he was talking about, and I've seen this concept too, movement snacks. Basically, you're at work all day, maybe desk-bound job, where you're in front of the computer. There are a lot of things you can do on your breaks to induce a little bit of physical activity. That can be squats by your desk. That can be walking up and down the stairs. I had a long day at work the other day, and I brought a weight vest with me. And on lunch, I packed my lunch. It's a factor meal that you can heat up in 2 minutes. So for my 30-minute lunch, I did a 4-minute Tabata double under jump rope workout, followed by throwing on that weight vest and just going up and down my stairwell. And I'm always entertained by my colleagues walking past me when I do this kind of stuff at work. They'll see sweat marks in my office when I do like a kettlebell workout in my office when I have a snack. But I mean, these opportunities are around us all the time. So you can find windows, even if it's just for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute. You can get a lot of work in a specific way as long as it is reasonable for you and meets your goals. But no matter where we are, there's always an opportunity to improve a little bit. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's never completely easy. That wall sit sucked. I love isometric holds because, yeah, it's a physical stimulus, but really it's all internal in my head. If I decide I'm not going to break, safety considered, of course, if I'm having pain or other issues, I'm going to listen to my body. But if it is just discomfort, I can push through that and get it done.
I love that. I also forgot to mention, you're a Guinness World Record holder.
Former.
Which is so, I mean, that takes a lot of discipline. That takes, that's no joke, right? And your resilience teacher, and you believe that resilience is a skill that can be trained. What are some steps that someone could take to start training that resilience when they feel like, like they don't have any resilience? And also, what can a parent do for their child to help build their resilience in a healthy way?
When we talk about like skill acquisition or skill development, I've been kind of ruminating on this quite a bit recently, and I'm not sure there's anything about our being that can't be viewed as a skill that can be trained. Of course, we're born with certain physical attributes. Like I can't will my arms into being longer than what they are. I can't make myself taller. I can't change maybe certain genetic components of myself, pathologies that I have, certain aspects of us physically. But man, when it comes to our character, when it comes to our capability, I'm not sure there isn't anything that we can't train according to our goals and what we want to get out of life. And we could riff on that more later. But to your question about resilience, I was taught stress management in the military, and I started being an instructor for stress management. But as I did that for the first 5 years or so, I kept coming back to when you manage the stress and you recover from it, which is inevitable in life, there's going to be adversity. No matter who you are, no matter what your upbringing, your background, there will be challenge for sure. We need to manage what's on our plate. We need to recover from that. That's how you prevent burnout. That's how you induce sustained performance in whatever realm you're operating. But man, we can train using stress to make ourselves more capable the next time it inevitably comes. And I don't know a part of our life, at least I haven't found one yet, where resilience isn't a skill that can serve you well. We talked about it on our first conversation on your podcast. I love the concept of intentionally inducing stress in order to train the skill that is resilience. So that is the way that it can be done. Stress is neither good nor bad, and there is no stressor that I would say you have to do this in order to train the skill that is resilience. It requires knowing yourself and what is important to you. What are your values? What is your job? What are your family demands? Who are you taking care of? But no matter what the stressor, cause yourself some amount of manageable stress, have some sort of prepared strategy as you induce that stress for a given period of time, overcome that. That, just like any other way to train a skill or build a muscle, is how you train resilience. In children, their brains are forming. So these are developing minds that are much more emotional than they are rational. So as hard as I want to go in the paint on my children, I need to be really patient. I need to be really present and really considerate of where they are in their developmental cycles as I rationally encourage challenge safely, but still be there to support them. So they know mom and dad are there, have their back, they're safe, they can take reasonable risk to learn through mistakes, learn through failure, all these things, these universal truths that we're all aware of. But universal truths have to be learned individually at every stage of your life in every domain. These concepts can translate, but very easy to talk about it sitting right here. It's very hard to do in practice. And it's very hard to teach to developing minds. But having that patience, having that awareness of they're doing the best that they can with what they have, and they need guidance. They don't need to be told this is the way. They need to be shown and then provided safe ways to try it themselves, making mistakes, knowing that mistakes are okay, and then taking on the challenge next time around.
Yeah, I think that's, what you mentioned emotional, right? They're more emotional people, like human beings, little human beings. And also there's like different stages. Like I did a Substack post on it on the Empower Lit page on rejection therapy, and as much as I want to introduce it to my nephew who's 3.5, like we're not there yet. Like that's, like in 10 years from now, we got that, but it's just meeting them where we are and also meeting yourself where you are, and that comes from a lot of self-awareness. And I don't feel like we do that enough. We don't do a lot of self-awareness. And I think it might be, and this is just a theory, but it could be that we're rejected constantly. And then to critique ourselves, it's just an extra. That's why we get so defensive in a way. Like we don't need that extra, especially from ourselves. But what is some ways that we can start self-observation to be able to know like what we can handle and then grow from there? Because we can handle a lot, but also it's just allowing yourself to it's like weight training, right? It's like I start at 5 pounds and now I'm at 20 pounds, right? But I worked my way up to that. So what are some things that we can do to increase our self-awareness, to understand where we're at, and then give ourselves more grace to then, increase?
Every good parenting book I've read and enjoyed almost always starts out with what you're talking to. Self-awareness, management of yourself before you can connect with and guide any young person, let alone your child who you care more about than anything else in this world. And when you care, you're going to stress. And balancing that sympathy where I feel emotions, I get emotional for whatever reason when my kid is struggling, whether it's because they're having a hard time or they're potentially not listening to my wife, and that's causing my youngest to wake up from her nap. So whether it's anger, whether it's fear, whether it's all these emotions, we tend to feel them more for the people we care about most in this world. So coming back to ourselves first. If I'm emotional, I'm going to have a hard time being rational. So I cannot effectively parent. I cannot effectively function, for that matter, if I am so significantly emotional that I'm blowing up. I mean, even as adults, if you're having a hard time, is it helpful when somebody else is irritated by your hard time, is trying to help you hurry through that hard time when they're frustrated and emotional themselves? Like, Gina, get out of it. Why don't you just shut your mouth, quit crying, suck it up? Now, there's a time probably when you went through your SEAL training where that might have been helpful, but you knew what it was. If you were responding unprompted and unprepared to a hard time, then that probably would not be the most effective way to connect with you. So coming back to, when I feel that internal fire, those internal emotions, which are really emotions, in my opinion, are just different colors of our stress response. At the core of our brain, the stress response is activated when we sense a threat of any kind. And then when the amygdala takes off, fires up the sympathetic nervous system, that stress response gets colored by the different emotions based on the perceived threat. And whether that is, again, anger, whether that's fear, whether that is jealousy, even happiness, is the stress response colored a different way. So we need to be aware of that. And the only way to experience that and have self-awareness, again, is to induce it, to be present when you're experiencing it. That can be, again, with intentionally doing it yourself, or sometimes when you enter environments where you know you're prone to it. Behind the wheel on the way to work, where you know you're going to encounter traffic, yet you still get pissed off every time you're in traffic. With that difficult colleague that you interact with regularly, that always turns into frustration, turns into at least internal beliefs, opinions, and degraded function, emotional reasoning. Enter these environments with a different perspective of, here's the challenge. How can I approach this calmly? How can I approach this with a different perspective? And what do I feel when I am starting to experience those emotions. So frustration is a feeling, but really, why am I frustrated? What's the underlying emotion there? And how can I reframe that to change the feeling? Maybe I'm just passionate about the mission. Maybe there's a time period that feels urgent, but I'm not seeing the opportunity of connecting with this person so we can get the job done together. That's a work example. It can relate to parenting too, but differentiating your emotions from your perspectives of them, and then thinking about that before you enter the domain can really help you reframe how you respond to it in the first place, what your symptoms are when you're experiencing stress, because you might feel stress differently than I do. That self-awareness comes from, man, is it my chest tightening? Is it my gut clenching? Is it my rate of speech goes up? My breathing changes? All of these are indicators, triggers, if you will. I love the word trigger. A lot of people use it like a reason to get emotional. Actually, whatever's triggering to you can be what you can use as a trigger to yourself to trigger response so you can manage the only thing you have control over, which is the internal. As much as I'd like to control my children, when I try to do that, I'm usually more emotional and it usually doesn't go very well. But if I can reflect inward and manage what my quote unquote triggers are, realize that they're just signals and opportunities for self-management, awareness followed by interruption, and then optimize function.
A lot there. You said a lot of great, amazing things that just is so good. And I also like the fact that control you talked about, especially with children, because in a way too, it's like you can't control them, but also you need them to do something. Like, like we have to get into the car and you have to get dressed to go, and you're on a time schedule because you have to be somewhere, right? But then with kids, it's just so unpredictable.
Yeah.
Like so unpredictable. And for you with your, 4 kids, homeschool, also, in your job, that you have, I don't know how demanding, but it's the military, and, it's also very different from the civilian world and stuff. And what are some, and you mentioned this earlier, you talked about, in the military, you did stress management training and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you learned there that you now use with, like, tools that you use, especially with being a father and having young kids, to, like you said, you can't control them, but things have to get done. And then, to keep that stress all down also, because when you get upset, then it just escalates and all that stuff. So what are some stress management tools that you've learned that you still use?
It's funny you asked that because it relates to your previous question. For my favorite tool and lesson from my initial training, which I still do it, by the way. I do as many presentations on stress management resilience as I do audiology, which is funny. There's a lot of what they call safety stand downs in the military, and I'm a subject matter expert for audiology, hearing loss prevention, auditory performance in extreme environments, and I love talking about that stuff. I could do it all day. But I'm asked just as often, if not more often, to talk about stress management and resilience. Based on the population, yes, the stressors are different, but stress is persistent for everyone. I always talk about the most common injury in the military is noise-induced hearing loss. That's about a 10% prevalence rate. But how many people in the room are affected by stress? And of course, every hand goes up. So injury is different than being affected by it, of course. So an injury you don't recover from quickly, but sometimes stress you don't recover from quickly based on how you manage it and the tools that you have to truly recover from it. And that's burnout. If you don't recover from stress, you will become burnout eventually, and you will have injuries that are either obviously diagnosed related to stress because they're mental health disorders, or you have degraded performance elsewhere, develop other pathologies in your body because stress is a huge risk factor for so many different types of disorders, or you make a mistake and you get a physical injury or something else. So stress can impact all aspects of our life if we don't manage it. And my favorite tool.
Also, when you're more stressed too, it's like you're more prone to being physically injured.
Yes, absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you talk about that urgency with children. Like if I'm rushing, like they say in the Navy SEALs, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Because when you are rushing, you are going to make mistakes. You can keep moving in a very controlled pace, calmly, despite chaos happening around you. Again, easier said than done. I screw this up every day with my kids. Thankfully, I have a wife who has taught me valuable lessons on repair because, yeah, sometimes we just have to hurry up and get in the car. Now, I'm going to try not to raise my voice. I'm going to try not to cuss and do those things that thankfully I'm gotten quite good at, even though I feel the fire inside of me. But there is just some time I'm going to have to move your body if you're not moving yourself so we can make it to your music.
Yeah. We got to go. Gentle parenting only gets me so far.
Yeah. And
I mean, sometimes I have to yell. I mean, I don't mean to, but and then sometimes I'm yelling, I'm like, oh gosh. Because also I realize if I could have, and the reason why, because some people who are listening to this and might be like, there's nothing wrong with raising your voice. The key though is the fact that when I catch myself, it's awareness, right? And number two, if I can control myself and I won't lose it with my kid, right? Well, for me, it would be my nephew. I won't lose it on a stranger. I won't lose it, because if you can control yourself within your family, because they're the ones that really push your buttons and all stuff, then it makes you a better person for society, And for myself, I'm always like, when society, it's so much easier for me with society because I can do the whole positive, like if someone cuts me off in traffic, I can do the whole, I forget exactly what it's called, but it's like positive reframing, like someone may be injured and they're rushing to the hospital, and so I'm not getting upset at that, someone, doesn't hold the door for me right there and shuts it on my face. They could be rushing to, something. I think about that. So obviously I know with my nephew or within my family members what the real situation is. But if I cannot lose my cool with them, then I'm going to be a better human in society. I'm going to be able to tolerate others easier.
Yeah, it's self-command. Like I would ask that person saying raising your voice is effective. I agree with you. And if it's a safety concern, I'm going to raise my voice. But I would ask you, are you doing that consciously with intention? Even though you're calm on the inside, you're raising your voice in order to intervene quicker to prevent a physical safety, not psychological safety. I love differentiating those two concepts. But raising your voice because there's a physical safety concern or for a purpose, even though internally you're pretty calm. Or are you doing it subconsciously because you have no command over your body where it just blurts out? And not only is that lacking awareness within yourself and maybe developing a habit that's not beneficial for you in other domains as you interact with other people, but it's not going to be beneficial over time with the people you're interacting with, particularly children. They're going to habituate to that just like anything else. And you raising your voice will lose its effect because you raise your voice to everything. So Coming back to being conscious and intentional when you raise your voice and why, it's a tool like anything else. To your question about tools within the stress management that I still use to this day, self-awareness. There is a tool called the stress continuum within the program that I was trained in now over 11 years ago, which is crazy to say. But it's called the stress continuum because I know I grew up thinking stress is bad. And it can be bad for sure if you don't recover from it once again. But also there's like anything else, most things operate on a spectrum or continuum. It's not you're good to go or you need to go to the hospital because you're stressed out. Of course, we know that rationally it is not true. But boy, do we think about if you're stressed, oh my God, I'll stop. That's bad. And if you're not stressed, good, you're in a great place. We are going to experience different levels of stress every day. So on this continuum, very simply, it has 4 different zones. Green, good to go. Yellow, very much like a traffic light, means what?
Caution.
It depends on what kind of driver you are. Could mean speed up. It could mean caution. That's the joke.
Oh yeah, you can tell I'm cautious. My family's like, go, go, go. And like,
it does mean caution.
Slow it down.
You just got to hear my joke that I tell in the class. So usually people say slow down or caution. I'm like, well, if you're a highway driver like me, it means speed up. But it means that you are responding to stress. And so a yellow zone stressor is an everyday stressor that we experience, whether it's trying to hurry up and get in the car because you're running late for something, that email that comes through that rubs you the wrong way, you name it. There's 100 different types of yellow zone stressors that happen every day. Orange is injured. So that would be you're significantly responding to stress. And that can happen due to mismanagement of yellow zone stressors or stress over time. So you think of they call it wear and tear. It's another name for burnout. But stress is impacting you so much that you have degraded performance, where it is objectively noticeable that you're not functioning as well due to whatever that stressor. If it's acute, it could be something like a threat to your life, a significant illness, or a loss, like loss of maybe even like a vehicle. If you get in a bad accident, which at the same time is a life threat, it could be loss of a job, of course, or loss of a loved one. You could use the example of if you or I were to lose a family member tomorrow, do we need to go to the hospital to have psychological intervention on us? Maybe. It depends on how we respond to it, but loss is inevitable. And so not necessarily do you need to seek psychological intervention because of a significant stressor. You need to have support systems in place. You need to be sure that you are properly grieving, because grief is natural. If you experience a loss and you're just good to go, that is as concerning as a suicidal ideation or a plan that you put in place because you're responding so poorly. Both would be concerning. Grief is natural. But of course, the significance of that and the time that it lasts can help determine if this is something that needs professional intervention or not, which is when we start talking about illness or the red category, where yes, we do need our psychologists, our social workers, our mental health professionals to intervene, because we've gotten to the point now where it is concern of safety and or life and or just general health, from, like, you think of the mental health disorders that get diagnosed: major depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, even post-traumatic stress disorder. Trauma is not necessarily like a traumatic event. It's not necessarily a reason for intervention right away, but lack of recovery, the typical time period you see in the DSM criteria is a month. If you're not recovering and seeing improvements over that time due to lack of support systems, lack of strategies, or whatever other reason, that's when that criteria starts ticking toward, let's seek some professional intervention to get over that hump and support that person. So I love the stress continuum to think about self-awareness. And it's another great tool to think about differentiating stressors, events that cause stress, and stress. So you think about, what are these indicators for when you're in the yellow for not only my own symptoms, but what are typical causes in my life that put me there? What are things that have happened in the past that took me from good to go right to orange? My uncle committed suicide back when I was in grad school. It was a great Thursday or Friday afternoon. I had a fun camping trip planned with a bunch of friends that weekend. Got the call from my mom, went from good to go to holy cow, my life changed in a brief moment. And while I was still functioning, I was degraded in my performance. I didn't need professional intervention, but I needed some support systems. I needed to be of support to my systems. That was a challenging time in my life, and I've had many others. So you reflect back on those times, you think about how you reacted or responded, what maybe those feelings and perspectives were, and you develop self-awareness for preparation, particularly mentally and maybe even physically, for future adversity, which again is inevitable. And you can differentiate not only the stressors and the stress, but where you have control within all of those, again, to start planning your training for what kind of strategies can I build, what kind of networks, maybe in pockets of vulnerability in my past, or I didn't have the support systems I needed. How can I start cultivating those networks now? And maybe even how can I give myself experience so I can encourage my own resilience within those networks and be of support to others too.
As a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, when you're talking about stressors, I mean, right there, you're putting yourself also through stress. I mean, I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a short period of time. I don't like being touched, so that's why I did it because I wanted to get over that uncomfortable thing, and also I wanted to get stronger, and self-defense and all that stuff. But you are, rolling around on the mat and doing different moves it's chess, really, essentially. You're always thinking forward. You're putting yourself through stress, intentionally and stuff. And they say that jiu-jitsu, and the reason why I mentioned stress, is called human chess, right? So I'm not sure if you heard that, but that's rumor has it when I was doing some research. But what I want to know is, how does that help you in life to, I guess, handle the things that are coming, because you're thinking ahead, you're thinking about the next move or where you got to go or how to get out of a certain situation, right?
I love jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts for a variety of reasons. From when I was a brand new beginner to now I've been doing it for over 8 years. I've derived so many lessons in training that I try to translate to other aspects of my life. So even as a fresh beginner, you just get really comfortable with failure. I mean, you're not going to come in there, no matter how big you are, how fit you are, and be successful against trained individuals. particularly if they're the same size. Because I remember your hilarious story. You went to a few classes and you went home and told your brothers about it, and then they kicked your ass. And you're like, oh, this stuff, this doesn't work. But of course, you would need to train much longer to be effective against your older brothers, right?
No, I'm actually the oldest.
You're old. Okay, so your bigger brothers that are
they're bigger. Yeah, they're much bigger than me. They could step. One of them can just step on me.
You learn how to embrace failure and make mistakes. And if you're a beginner in any realm, that's going to happen. I think about this with my kids. Like one kid in particular, he's a perfectionist, and he hates making mistakes when it is observed by others. He's actually a beautiful learner, and when he's just playing and he messes up, he just keeps going until he gets it right. But if it's like in school or the things where he feels like he's being assessed, he gets really emotional and disappointed when he makes mistakes. So I'm really trying to cultivate without, there's nothing wrong with that, but like trying to set up other ways for him to mess up and realize that's part of eventually getting good. And all these realms where he is very competent already, like climbing and gymnastics and all these sports that he enjoys doing. Like, remember when you first started doing this, like all of that stuff wasn't possible. You just kept doing it. And the more you do anything, the better you get. You have to suck initially in order to eventually get good. And the more comfortable you can get sucking at things and being comfortable with that, you can do anything, because you get past that vulnerability that we feel and that hesitation we feel of looking foolish or of quote unquote failing. And unless it's physical safety and failure means death, then it's okay to mess up. It's okay to make mistakes. It's required in order to get better. And even for the most extreme aspects of life, like individuals training for war, they're going to train really significantly where they fail in safe environments where they don't die, but they'll be debriefed like, you died in this. How can we prevent that next time? How can we figure out how to continue to push the envelope in our training so when the real thing comes, we are so dialed in? Because to your point about jujitsu being chess, I've had a lot of great conversations with experts that have been rolling a long time, high degree black belts, who argue based on the role, jiu-jitsu can be chess. And if you're going really slow and you're thinking about like almost drilling or flowing, as they call it, and just trying to set up moves and thinking about how you want to implement some things that you've been training, you can slow down and you can use your rational mind. But really, as you get into more competitive rounds or a different type of flowing where you're trying not to use your conscious rationality at all, and you're just trying to use your muscle memory and let your body do the thing. You're using your instincts that you've trained. So it becomes more like checkers. Your body feels what happens and then you respond accordingly. So you're not thinking 5 or 6 moves ahead. You're acting, you're feeling their reaction, and then you're acting again. And the more you can do that and train those instincts, that's my big passion about skill development. When we can slow down, rationalize, and game plan all day, let's do that. That's how you get better. That's part of being a beginner. But the more competent you get, the more subconscious you can train these instincts to make them productive for you. And that can be physically, that can be mentally, that can be in any domain you're trying to get better. But now, without having to slow down and think, we can just act, but act productively because it is so ingrained from our training.
You always say so much in a good way, because then I have like 20 other questions regarding what you say, because I didn't think of it like that in terms of it's like cause and effect, like, you know, where something happens to you and then you and there's many different ways that you can approach a situation of someone taking you down, like your next move to get that tap out, right? There's many different ways. I remember for myself, I used to do Aikido, and it was all about going in, like not resisting anything. You go with the flow of everything. But we would do these self-defense lines, and you know, when I was in the middle and everyone would come at me one at a time, right? But I didn't know what they were going to throw at me, and I would then do my first block but then freeze, and everyone would just be stopping waiting, where like they flowed so naturally, but my rational logical brain was like, okay, what do I do next? We're in an actual situation. Like, that's it. Like you said, you're dead. Like, that's it. You're done. I'm in the van. So, and it would frustrate me. Like I would just get so upset and I want to do it over and over and over to get it right. What can individuals do like without, I guess in a way, like let's on their own to be able to not be so rational and logical, but like to be more, I guess, embrace the cause and effect and to allow yourself to flow with life in an individual way. Does that make sense? Like instead of me going to work with somebody else, is there something that we can do on our own, essentially?
Depends on the domain, because the short answer is repetition and then cause plasticity. So adaptations in your body in whatever way that might be to where you make the muscle memory and the instincts more natural. So that's the short answer. Again, I love the physical realm to do this because one of my favorite things, coming back to the jiu-jitsu example, when we are having sparring rounds, and I'll spar in a variety of ways based on my training partner. I'm not trying to win like it's a competition. It's training. It's not competing. But when we're having hard rounds, I'm a smaller guy compared to most of my training partners. And one of my favorite things to do is to not go for quick submissions. Of course, we can, through strangulation or joint manipulation, put somebody to sleep or put a limb at a breaking point to cause a tap. My favorite way is to take people out of their game so much by causing such extreme amounts of discomfort and stress that they quit mentally before I get their body even close to breaking physically or choke them. So I make them, I test their soul, if you will. And I really enjoy cooking people in that way because that's one of the most valuable lessons that I learned in jiu-jitsu. I would be taken to the brink of exhaustion and questioning life from people who used to beat me up in the same way. All of my good friends that trained with me to make me better. It taught me how to become comfortable when I'm really uncomfortable. So if I can still breathe, if I can still move, even if it is just an inch, I still have some fight in me. I don't need to give up in my head because my body is tired or because I'm having a hard time breathing as efficiently as I normally would like to. So the more you do anything, the better you get. And to answer your question, how do you train that? I'm going to come back to my favorite answer, intentional stress. And there are so many things that you can do to make yourself extremely uncomfortable while you are safe. Again, physical safety is so important because I have heard and read countless horror stories about people doing too much in a sauna or using too much weight in the gym. And not only injury, but loss of life from trying to go too hard in the paint too soon. So when you're starting out, it is inducing discomfort at a manageable level. And if you've never lifted before, make it so freaking easy that showing up is the win. That small win.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you lift that 5 pounds a few times. I talked to Gwendolyn Bounds recently. So she wrote the book Not Too Late. She has the phenomenal Substack called Not Too Late. And it's about in midlife, she heard an older gentleman say to a younger girl at a dinner party, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for whatever reason, I mean, we've all heard that question a million times, but she's this successful journalist by all kind of measures, extremely successful in life, has already written a phenomenal book that talked about across the world, sold across the world. It hit her like there's still things left undone within me. And there's still things that I want to challenge myself to do outside of the success that I've had. She went home and she Googled, what is the hardest thing that people can do? And one of the things that came up was Spartan racing or obstacle course racing. And that set her on this path, on this journey to become one of the best obstacle racers in the world for her age category. And it was just that night after she Googled that and saw some training programs, she got down on the ground and she did 5 push-ups. Struggled through it, but that was all she could do. 5 push-ups. And even if you can't do 5 push-ups, even if you can't do one, you can modify to do something. If you can do one modified push-up or even one like negative where you just start in the top position on your knees and go slowly down to the ground, tomorrow you can do 2. And that doesn't take too long. If you keep showing up, not only is your body adapting, your mind and the neurological connections to your muscles, if we're talking physical, is adapting too. That's why they call it neuroplasticity. It is the neurological, the neuromuscular connections that change over time. And I assure you, if you keep showing up, your mind, your body, your whole being will change. But make yourself a little uncomfortable. And then when you get more comfortable doing that thing, make yourself a little bit more uncomfortable forever, safely.
Yeah. As you say that, it's funny. So when I was at Team Eagle 1, it was a little different for the gym because you had to do the gym workout and you had to film it. So it wasn't like you could just, and you had to put whatever it was, you had to film it. We all had like the same thing for the day. You had to go to the gym, film it, and then send it in the Facebook group, right? And then everyone would see it and comment and whatever, right? So, but when I left and I wanted to go, there was no accountability, right? It was like I had to now be my own accountability, and just showing up was just such a challenge that I would just drive myself to the gym and walk in and walk out. Like walk in, walk around the gym and walk out just to get myself to show up. And then after a week, I would do a couple of exercises. And it wasn't like anything that he gave, like the workout. It was just, I saw 3 exercises and I said, that one I'm going to do. And then I'll go the next one and just choose 3. Right. And then I would go home and, another week would pass. And then I would start as my body was getting adjusted to showing up. Right. Then I was able to put his workouts, which were just, I sent them to you. They were just like extremely intense for a beginner,
Yep.
for someone like me, right? I'm not training to be a Navy SEAL. Like that's what the workout was for. But I worked my way up to that level, but I will say I'm fighting myself the entire way. But I think what we don't realize, and this was in the article that I wrote today on Substack, that's so normal. Like fighting hard things, like you choosing to do something hard and your body and mind quitting and you having to coach yourself, like that's so normal. And for myself, I used to get so frustrated with me because I used to be like, why do you want to quit so much? Why do you want to take the easy road? But like that's just human nature. Like our brain has been wanting to keep us safe forever. So it's like, and I want you to talk a little bit about this because you're the one that introduced it to me. I know you got it from someone else from an article, but about giving yourself grace. I think that's so important and we don't really do that. And I'd love for you to talk further on giving yourself grace, and then maybe to, as a parent, giving your children grace and how they give you grace.
In the parenting realm, again, my wife is the praise for that, not necessarily me, because I was not historically great at giving myself grace, forgiving myself, even for making mistakes. I was one of those kids who didn't want to fail in public and would avoid risk in realms that I was not already comfortable and or confident because I didn't want to appear to be a failure or less than, if you will, because that was all internal. No one else was thinking that way. It was all inside my head. Grace is imperative as a person and a parent to allow yourself to keep showing up because you are going to fuck up. You are going to make mistakes. And the concepts of differentiating guilt and shame is where I've gotten much better at giving myself grace. I do feel guilty when I make a mistake, particularly if that mistake impacts others, because the guilt is attached to my action. I want to learn from that. And that guilt that I feel whenever I have not delivered on an intention or goal that I set, it is just a way to help prepare myself to hopefully execute better next time around. So guilt is not attached to me. It is to my actions that can be improved, that can be trained, so I show up better the next time. Shame, however, that's attached to your identity. That's attached to who you are. So if you feel ashamed and because of actions or mistakes that you've made that you can't change anymore, you're probably snowballing and you're probably creating a pattern there, but that's hard to get out of. If you just think that you're a failure, if you just think that I'm just not good at working with others, or I'm just not that good of a dad. I mean, you think of these things that we sometimes almost naturally can say to ourselves, maybe because of our childhood, maybe because of other influences in our life, or whatever reason. When you start attaching these labels to yourself, that is a very hard thing to reverse. So you can forgive your actions easily. You feel guilty for them, but at the same time, have grace for yourself. Just like, hey, I want to do this better next time. I made a mistake. Own it. Ownership, by the way, is really good in grace too. Like, hey, I did this. This is my fault, or at least I played this part in it, and I'm going to do this to not let it happen again. People are going to forgive that way more than you project it and blame other people. Like we can be sometimes prone to do when we don't want our identity to be questioned, which is usually just internal in the first place. But no, our identity, ourselves, we're constantly changing, and you're going to make mistakes all along the way. So realizing that, like, hey, I'm going to talk to myself in the ways that I would talk to anyone else that I loved and cared about. And I'm going to show myself grace and forgiveness for my actions because they are not indicative of the person I'm trying to be.
Hey, quick pause before we dive back in. You know how we talk about building resilience, confidence, and mindset? There's a nonprofit helping kids do exactly that. Every mission starts with a story, but right now, 1 in 3 kids in America feels like they don't belong, and only 30% read at grade level. At Empower Lit, we're changing that one school at a time. Through author visits, literacy camps, team publishing programs, and Cosmo the Alien on YouTube, we help kids discover confidence through storytelling. When you give a monthly donation, you're not just donating, you're helping a child believe in themselves, their words, and their worth. Join the mission at empowerlitnonprofit.org because belief is where every great story begins. All right, now back to the episode. Let's get into it.
Because you mentioned that you didn't like failing in public, right? And you also, you have a son that is the same, right? So, but you also talked about how difficult it is to, when you, to make changes, right? To make those changes. How did you make those changes for yourself, and how do you do your best to make sure your son doesn't take on what you took on as a child? Does that make sense?
It does. What's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over again.
Yes. So that is where I often ran into problems. So if I was deathly terrified of talking in public, which I was, if I prepared in the same way that I did, each time I epically failed talking in public and didn't show up in the way that I was proud of, then that would be pretty insane to expect a different result from the same preparation. So modifying how you approach areas in your life that you want to improve is absolutely the way to do that. My wife does this in homeschool. It is just, I love when I can be around when she's doing homeschool because it is awe-inspiring to watch. Awe-inducing, and very inspiring to watch. Her patience and her ability to adjust how she explains a problem, the patience that she has when he gets a little frustrated, but helps guide him to approach it in a different way, to even consider it in a different way. Modifications. Just adjust your approach so you can still show up and probably scale back the expectation, or if it is like you are coming up short in whatever the realm is, maybe adjust your expectations and scale back what that win is so you can build back a little bit better to what that initial issue was, if that makes sense. I'm trying to answer it in a way that's across domains, and I try to cultivate in the sun the same way I watch my wife do in school. Like if we're struggling with something physically, let's try it a different way. Let's table it and do something different that's actually related to it. You don't realize that we're working on it, and then you come back and you've just developed a little bit more. But it's both a physical thing and a mental thing. It is adjusting the expectations of yourself internally, and then training maybe a different way externally to then meet at a higher capacity next time around.
I love, by the way, I just want to throw this in there for our listeners because I should have said this earlier, but Kyle, one thing I love about you is you have so much accountability. Like you take ownership, and I want to know, why do you, in your opinion, why do you feel like individuals do not like to take ownership or accountability for themselves or their lives, or anything that's or if something happens to them or they do something? Like, an example is I was working in a restaurant a bajillion years ago, and the cups were supposed to be stacked a certain way, and I didn't stack them that way, right? And the manager was like 5 of us around, and then the manager, and she was like, "Who stacked the cups like this?" And I was like, "Oh, that was me." And everybody's face, including the manager, was just shocked that someone even had accountability for that or admitted to that or something like that. And she didn't even know what to say. And then she's like, well, and then she realized that cups go stack this. It wasn't a big deal, but the fact is, and I recall that because I was blown away at the fact that everyone was so shocked that somebody came forward, right? Why do you feel like we have a hard time in society as individuals to take accountability and ownership?
External validation is something a lot of us, unfortunately, are very susceptible to. We live in a time where everyone's judging each other on social media, or at least you see it happening. in the different realms of the world, online, in the news. It's always projection. It's always, this is what's wrong about everything. And that external validation just becomes a cultural consideration that we all have. And if we feel like others are judging us for some reason, even though we know this, it influences our own self-esteem. Like making others proud is somehow tied to our ability to make ourselves proud. Ownership, again, we talk about this rationally. It's easier said than done. But when you do that, notice what happens around you. Don't be superficial about it. Don't own something that's either not related to you, or if you're disingenuous about it, that'll be obvious. But if you truly approach it like, everything I'm a part of, I at least have some role in. Even if I am not, if we're going to play a comparison game, more than 50% at fault when a team fails, if you own your part, and true ownership is not just saying, that's my bad, my fault, and then not explaining why and what you're going to do to make it better the next time. Like, make it a challenge for yourself, and go figure, you're going to get better, and people respect that. Like, you will see that actually, if you are worried about external validation, which I challenge you, other than those that you care about, that you're trying to serve, like I do worry about external validation with my wife. If I'm focused on improving myself and it's not in line with our values as a family, and I'm further distancing myself from her, now that's a source of validation I do want to check in on regularly. But most other people, like I want to show up for my colleagues. I want to show up particularly for those that I'm a leader of, make sure I'm meeting their expectations and I'm serving them so they can do their jobs well. Like, that's why we meet and talk about expectations and set boundaries in all the roles of our lives. But outside of the realms that you care about, that you actually can influence and connect with, I don't really give a shit what other people think, because they don't know me, and they probably just have, either they're having a hard time, they're projecting on me, or just they don't have all the information. God knows I've done that 100 million times throughout my life toward others. But the more I remove that noise, the more that I focus on internal validation, knowing what my values are, how they are in line with the people I care about, and how my actions are aligning with those values, that provides me the internal validation I need to keep showing up. And when I deviate, ownership allows me to address the issue as early as possible and do my damnedest to never let it happen again. Will it happen again? Of course it will. We're prone to mistakes. But the more you do anything, the better you get. And that can happen with this kind of mindset around accountability too.
Yeah, 100%. That was fantastic. And I love the fact that you mentioned, like, I need that validation with my wife, because I need to make sure we're on the same page. Like, she feels valued and vice versa, because it's this team. So no one's really ever talked about the positive part of the external validation. It's mainly always the internal, and I thought you said that very beautifully. So thank you so much.
Like many things, I'm working on a piece related to that, but I have 100 different outlines and ideas that I throw and that I never take enough time to actually work on. So maybe one day I'll write an article on it. But yeah, like I think it came out pretty well.
You are so amazing. You are so disciplined. I just want to, I was thinking about you the other day when I was struggling with, I do so many things, right? And I am struggling with consistency with everything, because, you know, life things happen, and I'm like, gosh, Kyle is amazing with Substack. He is every single day. I'm getting the worthwhile reflections. I'm getting the fitness challenge. There's articles. He's reading everybody's stuff. He's commenting. I'm like so impressed with your discipline and getting things done. Do you specifically carve time for that? Do you batch it? How does it work for you to stay disciplined, for someone that is listening to this, mainly me, to be more disciplined and, you know, and on top of the things that you know that you need to do?
I'm glad I'm fooling you. I'm very disciplined. I'm very disciplined in some ways, but we all have opportunities to improve. My wife and I joked about this recently. So like, I'm disciplined in a lot of ways, but like when I indulge in certain types of food, I go all out. And my wife was making fun of me. Like, I'm disciplined until I'm not. It's like I have a hard time with moderation. So like, maybe I'm disciplined, but I don't moderate well. So when I go in, I go all in. But it's very easy to be disciplined in realms that you love. And I love Substack. I read Substack posts like yours before I'm going to read. I love reading. So all these books that you see behind me, my rate of reading books has slowed down because of how much I enjoy reading the different authors and accounts on Substack that resonate with me. So just like movement snacks, I take Substack snacks for sure. I'll read a post in a few minutes when I have a break, just because it's a little mind expansion muscle that I really enjoy. So that's where the reading comes from. The discipline in the morning routine of the daily fitness challenge. I just like to get a little something in to start off the day in case I can't get anything else in. And the worthwhile reflection, I love asking questions that don't have great answers. Just a little mental train, a little physical train, a little mental train every morning. And then I like the quote reflection too, because if I can't write on a given day, which, man, it feels most days, I cannot write in the same way that I was last year, where I had a few hours each morning when I'll get up at 5. My second youngest, James, who just turned 4, he looks just like me, he acts just like me, and he gets up early just like me. And it's not easy to have dedicated writing time when he's awake. So I at least get the quote reflection in. That's my new morning routine, even if he's climbing all over me. I don't feel like I'm not writing as many long form posts these days, because it's just pockets of time when I find them. It's actually another post I'm thinking about writing through some notes at is like commitments. And I had this commitment when I first started writing on Substack to produce one long form post a week. And I kept that up for a year and a half. And it's funny how like I keep that commitment in my mindset, yet I think of a year and a half ago, I wasn't doing a daily reflection. I wasn't doing the daily fitness challenge on Substack. I was doing it with my fitness community, but I wasn't producing that. I wasn't doing, I can't remember if I said the daily reflection or the daily quote, but that wasn't part of my morning routine. I wasn't reading anywhere near as much as I am now. I was reading books, but I had a lot more time and flexibility in my schedule. I didn't have my daughter born. So my life has changed, yet I'm still holding on to these past commitments. Like, we have all these life obligations that changes regularly, which, by the way, I don't believe in obligations. I believe you choose what you do, and there's consequences to every choice that you have. But remove that word obligation. You don't have to do anything. You get to do everything. But I'm a big believer in commitments. So on these perceived obligations that I have, I commit to things. And when I make a commitment, I'm going to do everything I can to uphold that commitment. But sometimes commitments get outdated. I've been wrestling with that long form post, even though I'm doing, on average, when you combine the podcast, the long form post, and everything else, I'm still producing weekly. But it's changed, and releasing old commitments that are no longer serving you so you can stay disciplined in the ways that align with your priorities is an ongoing battle that I'm dealing with. So yeah, discipline is easy when you love something, and maybe a little harder when you don't, but anything can become simpler the more that you do it. It never becomes easy. We were talking about fitness earlier. That wall sit I just did was not easy. Wall sits are very challenging for me just because I don't do them as often, but it's one of my favorite ways to make myself suffer really efficiently and deal with things like intentional breathing and going dark and getting through a stimulus for a very small amount of time. It is no easier than when I could only do it for a minute. I can just do it a little bit longer, but it feels just as hard every time, even though I know I can do it. It's easier to show up. It is not easier to finish. The delayed gratification is just as sweet as it always was. So the lessons around the practice help with the discipline too, for the things that maybe we don't enjoy as much. We realize the benefit at the end of the hard road of whatever the task may be and the time period that we do it.
How did you, stay disciplined on, and I'm just going to use Substack because that's the platform, right? But for our listeners that may use other social media platforms like Instagram or TikTok, right, where you're quote unquote, telling yourself for your business to be showing up every day, right? How did you stay disciplined to do that? If I feel like it's easier sometimes when I know people are responding, right? Even if one person responds, right? I'm like, okay, wow, someone read it, someone's engaged, someone enjoyed it, right? As opposed to, and that's the one thing I'm trying to get more of with our listeners here is I want more community engagement within the podcast. I want to hear from the listeners. And that is something that I am struggling with, which then makes me question the show because I've been at this for a year and a half. And lately I have been like, should I continue, right? Should I shut this down? I don't know. It's so much work. I'm not hearing from the community. I'm not hearing a benefit from it. I'll put stuff out there, but I'm not getting a response. How do you keep going, or how did you keep showing up when nobody would respond to your, did you ever get that? Did anyone not respond to your daily reflection or finish, and then how do you go, okay, I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yeah. And sometimes they still don't respond on certain days, just depending on what the question. Maybe I go too hard in the paint and ask a really weird question, or it's just one of those days. So it's that.
Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. And I'm like, that one's not for me.
If it made you uncomfortable, it's still a win for me. So I'm glad to hear it. It's the external versus internal validation dilemma again. So I am not going to do any of this if it doesn't offer some value for me. So I look at everything I do. I'm a pretty altruistic person. I became an audiologist because I want to be of service to others in that realm. I went to the military because I want to be in service as an audiologist. I love stress management resilience training because it helps other people. But all this shit I really love doing too, and it benefits me. Writing benefits me in so many ways. So when I was doing it for the first 8 months before I really started engaging in the platform and the other ways that it offers, it was so beneficial for me to exercise the muscle that was slowing down, getting my thoughts onto paper, metaphorically, because I write on my phone. I'm a loser. It's just easier. Like I don't have scheduled time to write. So I've talked about this with a few others, but I love hearing when people have their desk, pen to paper, and truly write, where I'm more in notes, typing out stuff, formatting things, then I throw on the computer and finish down the line. So I don't have scheduled time. It's different every day, but I really enjoy doing it. It's really beneficial for me. So everything I do has some balance between selfless intention and selfish reception. So I do receive selfishly everything that I do in some productive way. This conversation right now, if no one listened to it, I wouldn't care. I enjoy talking to you. I learn something every time. You have incredible guests. And every time I listen to your show, I get better because of it. And that's why I talk to the people that I do on my podcast. That's why I do anything, because at the end of the day, I love hearing that it helps other people, but that's a byproduct. It's really helping me, and I'm gathering things too. If God forbid I'm not alive tomorrow, I'm leaving something behind. So my loved ones know who I was, what I was passionate about outside of the engagements that we're already having or what we're talking about. Of course, I tell my kids certain things. I more often try to show them certain things because of their age. But one day that when their brain's fully formed, they could hear these things as often as they wanted to, or read these things as often as they wanted to understand me more fully. And then, of course, I got to try to live up by all the things that I'm doing too. But coming back to commitments, you do so many things, Gina. So like, if this commitment is no longer serving your overall mission with Empower Lit, your nonprofit, and everything else that you're working on, that's okay. Truly up to you and what aligns with what your personal mission is. And that mission will change. Our values change throughout life based on the different phases, different opportunities, and there's nothing wrong with that. So consistently reassessing your values and where you're at and what your mission is will allow you to determine what actions are aligning well with them and what commitments or actions maybe could be tabled or completely dropped so you can continue to evolve.
That's great advice. I love that. So our show, I could talk to you all day. What do you have for our listeners that we could develop on a daily basis to strengthen that our mindset to tackle those inevitable challenges that come our way?
Self-awareness first. So reflective questions. And if you have no other ideas, seeking mentorship can always help. So seeking a coach. I often say, like you were talking about with fitness, seeking a coach first so you can become disciplined in a particular way. When I said coach, that could be fitness, that could be mental, that could be, you name the domain you're trying to get better at. But seek somebody who has some experience, some wisdom that they can impart on you. And if it's not a good fit, find another one. There are so many free resources out there, Substack being one of them, where you don't have to spend any money. You can get a lot of ideas for ways to develop discipline in a certain domain. But any good coach, in my opinion, this is exactly what I try to do with the people I work with, tries to work themselves out of a job. I try to teach skills to become self-disciplined. So you get these concepts that you can then apply to yourself, where you don't need to come to me for a given workout or a given reflective question. We've developed the muscle enough to where now you can use your own creativity to align with your own values to develop your own training plans in the given domains you're trying to get better. But then, of course, we got to train it. There's a core values exercise that I really like for it. I always recommend. I'm actually writing up a piece right now about it in relation to a few speeches I've given recently. So assessing your values, prioritizing them based on that phase in your life, and then determining how your actions are aligned with them. That is a great exercise if you're not going to seek out a coach to help you do that in different ways. But then we have to train. So whatever those actions and opportunities are, make yourself a little uncomfortable in that realm, have strategies to help you endure it and overcome it, and then do it again once you get a little comfortable, expand, keep getting stronger in your respective way that you're trying to get better, train the skill that is resilience, and try to translate those lessons across domains in your life. It is easier said than done, but if you are capable in one area of your life, you can be capable anywhere else. It's just going to take some conscious intention over time and maybe some dedicated training to think about, how can I take my lessons of self-awareness and internal functioning and then project them into a different domain in the same way I was successful in another.
Thank you so much, Kyle. You are such a wealth of knowledge. You're so valuable to the show. And I am hoping our listeners got as much out of it as I do, because, it's always so funny. I said this the other day. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore. And then I get these amazing guests that it's like therapy. It's like, I learned so much that I'm like, this is so beneficial. I love it. So thanks again for being on the show. It's always a pleasure. Anyone that wants to connect with Kyle, we're going to link his Substack and everything else that he does in the show notes. For everyone that's listening, please like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Substack member. Check out Kyle's Substack. It's really so informative. I love everything that he has going on. Those worthwhile reflections are always getting my brain going in the morning, and his workouts are quick. They're easy, but not easy, but they're quick. And when I say easy, I mean like that you could bang them out. Yeah, it's gonna be painful. Yeah, but it feels good and it's quick. You could do it at any point, and like Kyle said in the beginning, get it in when you can. Get it in when you can, and I love that. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys all next Wednesday.